Hello and welcome back to Emily in the Kitchen. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about another really great family-friendly and, of course, more importantly, budget-friendly meal. This is one of my favorites and another one of my go-tos that my family eats probably once a week or so. And this is a really special recipe to me because this is one of the first things that I learned to cook when my husband was deployed with the military. So before he left, he did most of the cooking in the house, and it wasn't something I was very good at or comfortable doing. But this is something he taught me before he left, and it really helped me get through that really difficult time in our lives, but also gave me something that I could feed our family forever. And this was from a website that talked all about mix and match casseroles. So with mix and match casseroles, there's a lot of things you can do, and all of them are really affordable. So in the comments, we're gonna put the links to that website, so be sure to check that out. And while you're down there, like this video and subscribe to our channel. So everything that you see here on our counter today is what we're going to be using. But this recipe is a little more work than some of the crock pot ones I do. So we're going to cut to some of the exciting things that happen in the kitchen. We're going to brown some meat. We're going to mix a bunch of stuff in one of my favorite bowls. And we're also going to use one thing that's not on this counter, and that's water. So the good news is I didn't budget for water in this recipe. Now, your first question is, how much is this going to cost, Emily? There's a lot of things on your counter. Well, don't worry. This is a very affordable recipe. The way we're going to do it today is with ground venison, because that's what we have in our home right now, and with elbow macaronis, because that's how I get my children to eat food. But you can do this a lot of different ways. You can do it with ground beef. You could do it with chicken. You could do it with canned chicken. There's so many different ways you can do this. So I priced this out for probably the most common way you're going to do it, and that's with ground beef, because that is usually the most accessible meat for people to get. And we're going to use a little bit of breadcrumbs. We're going to use a can of mixed vegetables, but as I've said with other recipes, you can use frozen vegetables as well. We're going to use a can of cream of mushroom soup, some milk, some sour cream, the meat, a nice carb, and some water. And we're also going to use a little salt to season, not too much, but just a touch, and we didn't budget for that item. But everything else in here, and I'm going to itemize it in the comments, so be sure to go check out to see how much each thing costs, comes to a total of $8.78. Now, that's really great for feeding a family of four, and as you know, in my family, this will feed a family of four for 2 nights because the kids just pretend to eat and don't actually consume anything we give them. So for a family of 4, for one evening, this is going to be $2.20 a serving, and I think that's a really great deal. It beats out all the Happy Meals and other things like that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to brown the meat, and then we're going to mix all of the other ingredients into this bowl here. It's beautiful. I won it in a raffle, probably one of the only raffles I've ever won in my life. And what I love about this recipe is that's the only prep work that this takes. Browning the meat and then this filling up this bowl. As you know, I'm a busy mom, I work, I like to make things easy and affordable, so it's gotta be recipes that I can do pretty quick. So check it out. When we come back, we're gonna have some meat brown and we're gonna mix stuff up in the bowl. Oh, that didn't sizzle. All right, so we have browned our meat, and I used 1 pound of ground venison for this recipe, but you can use 1 pound of pretty much anything. You can use ground beef, which I think is typically the most popular choice for this recipe. And also we have preheated the oven to 350 degrees. Now, any recipe that requires an oven at 350 degrees is my favorite kind of recipe because most ovens come automatically set to that. So you press the bake button and 350 is already up there, and you press start, you're good to go. I really do value every second of my time. So even those moments where I have to press buttons to change oven temperatures, I think about. So we've got our meat right here in this really hot dish that I'm going to try not to bump into. This is something called an everyday pan, And I love this because I can cook over the stovetop in it, and then I can also put it in the oven, and then tomorrow night it can go in the microwave, so it's pretty versatile. It also has a lid, so when we're done putting all of our ingredients together here, we're gonna cover it for the first stage of cooking, and having the lid really helps because I don't have to waste tin foil, it's a little bit less messy, and I can see inside of it while it's cooking in the oven. All right, so now that the meat is done, we're gonna mix all of our ingredients in. So remember, the meat was costing us about $5.30. So that's gonna be the biggest expense in this recipe. Regardless of what meat you use, the protein that's in this recipe will be the most significant expense. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mix a can of cream of mushroom soup. And I'm looking at my cheat sheet because I wanna be as real with you on these prices as possible. I bought this can this morning and it was 75 cents. That is the most expensive this can has been in a while, but still makes for a very affordable meal. So I'm gonna take this can with the flip lids that I love, and I'm gonna steal my daughter's spatula yet again, and just pour this can of soup right into my mixing bowl. Sometimes I get creative and use different kinds of mixing bowls. I make this recipe a lot, so I do try to find fun ways to keep it fresh. The next thing I'm going to add is sour cream. So I mix the soup and the sour cream together. That's step one of the mixing bowl adventure. The sour cream I did buy in bulk because I do use sour cream in quite a few of my recipes, and it is something that I use to trick my children into eating other things that I tell them they just dip in sour cream and you can't taste them anymore. Come to me for all of your parenting advice. So this sour cream I bought in bulk, but this cup of sour cream, it's 1 cup I'm gonna put in, costs about 80 cents. Just put that right in with the soup. And then we're just gonna mix that up real good. This is my favorite part. I can't explain it. It's just very satisfying to me to mix these two products together. Now, you could also use a cream of chicken soup if you would like. This is a very versatile mix and match recipe. Again, check the comments for the link, but you'll see that you can pretty much use anything and not mess this up. All right, so the next thing I'm going to add is I'm gonna add some liquid into this. So I'm gonna add a cup of water, which I've pre-measured here. And then I'm going to add a cup of milk. So obviously the cup of water, if we really want to pull hairs, did cost something, but depending where you live and where you get your water from, I'm not going to play that game today. So just going to worry about the milk. So the milk here cost 30 cents for this cup of milk. So again, a very affordable ingredient, also lots of nutritional value. We get our milk at Manning's Farm Dairy right up the road, so it's super, super fresh. All right, now we're going to add vegetables because every good meal has to have a vegetable, whether the children eat it or not. So this is a can of mixed vegetables. I use this kind of can in a lot of my recipes. This can costs $1.05 currently, and it's got a handful of veggies in there. We've got carrots, green beans, peas, corn, a little bit of potato. There's a lot happening in that can. And we mix that up just a bit. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add the carb. Now for today's recipe, we're gonna add elbow macaroni. Now the reason we're adding elbow macaroni is because, like I said, my kids do like it, but it's also what I have open. One of the things I love about this recipe is you really can look at your pantry and figure out, what do I have right now? Sometimes I use rice, sometimes I use penne or bow ties. You can really use a lot of different kinds of pasta or rice for this. What you want to make sure is that you're thinking about the ratio of liquids. So I know that because I put that 2 cups of water and the 2 cups, the 1 cup of water and the 1 cup of milk, that 2 cups of liquid is enough to cook this pasta. So as you can hear, this pasta is not cooked. So it's 1 cup of dry elbow macaroni. I did the math on this. I had also bought this in bulk. It's a 2-pound or a 32-ounce package of macaroni. And that costs 58 cents for this 1 cup. So we're just gonna pour this in. This is also a very satisfying step. I do like mixing this in. Now this is the point where if you want to add any seasonings, this is a good time to do it. I've added garlic powder, I've added onion powder, salt, pepper. Today I'm not going to add anything because my kids are getting off the bus soon and we got to get moving. All right, so now I've mixed this all together and I am simply going to add it to my ground meat here. Word of caution, it splashes for the first few moments, so be careful. See it? Just a little bit of a mess on your shirt, on the counter. It's okay. It's worth it, I promise. All right, so that's all added in. And I'm gonna give that a good stir and just mix that up really good. When you're mixing it up, just think about colors. You wanna make sure that you see a little bit of every color throughout the dish. There we go, that looks great. All right, so we've got that done. We're just gonna slap a lid on that, just like that. We're gonna grab a rag, just wipe a little bit here that had splashed off. We don't want that making too much of a mess in the oven. It's one thing to clean a counter, it's another thing to clean an oven. All right, so we're gonna put this in the oven for an hour and 10 minutes. And then when we come back, we're gonna make sure it's looking pretty cooked. And then the last thing we're gonna do is sprinkle on some breadcrumbs and let that cook for another 10 minutes or so. So sometimes it needs an hour and 20 minutes, but we're gonna set it for an hour and 10 and see what it looks like. Now in my case, that pot is still hot, so we're gonna use our mitts. That right in there. Right, and let's set those timers for 1 hour and 10 minutes. And we'll come back then and see how it's going. All right, so it's been an hour and 10 minutes and so much has happened. I am exhausted. But while we were waiting, our dinner is just about done. So if you want to come take a closer look, you'll see that all the liquid has been absorbed mostly into the macaroni where it belongs. And now what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little bit of a crunchy top. Now there's a few things you can top this with for the last 10 minutes of baking. I'm choosing breadcrumbs. It's pretty simple and easy. This is a plain breadcrumb. Sometimes we use Italian style. You can also do cheese. That's always fun, but does add a little bit of calories. You can also do both. We've had nights where we've added breadcrumbs and then put a little cheese on top. So I'm just going to sprinkle the breadcrumbs on. I estimated, I took how much this whole container cost. Did my best to estimate how many casseroles I make with a container, and I think it's about 15 cents per casserole. So 15 cents for all the breadcrumbs that we're using. If you've got a lot of liquid left, and you usually won't when you use elbow macaroni, but if you use rice, you might have a little more liquid than this, then you might need a little more breadcrumbs to make sure it's all soaked up at the end of the baking time. But since we use that macaroni, we just need a little bit of breadcrumbs. Just gives it a little fun crunch. So now we're gonna keep the cover off this time, and we're gonna put it back in the oven for just 10 minutes. And when we come back, we'll see how it all turns out. All right, well, dinner is done, and dinner is done for under $10 and in under 2 hours. So again, this meal was a casserole, and it came to just under $9 for the whole thing, and just about $2.20 a person for a family of 4. And yeah, we are done. So the breadcrumbs gave it like a little nice brown texture to the top, and it's nice when you're eating it. It just gives it a really good flavor and texture. Now remember, we didn't add salt while we were cooking this, so you can add that at the end. And don't forget, you can find the link to the recipe in the description for this video. And you'll be amazed at how many things you can mix and match, how many different soups and vegetables and proteins you can use to make this come together. It really is a great pantry meal, something to have in your back pocket. All right, so we're just gonna serve this up. And I like to use my little spoon friend here. And there we go. We've got a nice serving to start with. Just need to season that a little bit. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us today.